The median American household between 55 and 64 has saved about $250,000 for retirement at the 4% rule. The standard safe withdrawal rate, and that's $10,000 a year in income, and the average American household spends $66,000 a year. But here's the part nobody says out loud. Those people aren't broke. They're comfortable. And comfortable is the exact mechanism that locked them out of level 3 wealth, because there is a specific psychological switch that fires in your brain the moment level 3 becomes visible. A switch I can show you down to the dollar amount, down to the emotional trigger, and once you see it, every raise, every bonus, and every brokerage statement you've ever looked at will make a different kind of sense. That's not the 95% statistic. That's the anatomy of why. By the way, I built a free early retirement calculator because most online ones are mathematically wrong. It uses BlackRock and Vanguard logic to expose the weak points in your plan, and I only ask for your email to send the report so I don't store any of your financial data. Link is in the description. Now, the escalator. Every large building has 3 ways to move between floors. There are stairs, they work, they always work, they're slow, they're tiring, and they're reliable. There's the elevator faster, less physical effort, operated by a company with maintenance contracts and a financial interest in you using it frequently. And then there's the escalator. The escalator is already moving. It was moving before you walked in. It requires exactly one thing from you. You step on it. And most people walk right past it, not because it's hidden, not because it's broken, but because the elevator lobby has a well-dressed attendant standing in it with a brochure and a really confident handshake. The escalator just sits there, running, with no marketing department. This is the frame for everything I'm about to tell you. The stairs are active income, working, grinding, converting your time into money at a fixed exchange rate. The elevator is the conventional financial advice ecosystem, sometimes useful, reliably expensive, with a curious habit of stopping between floors and charging you for the inconvenience. And the escalator is compounding capital velocity, the mechanism that separates level 3 wealth from level 2 wealth. It has been running since compound interest was invented. 95% of people walk past it their entire careers, staring at their phones. Let's define the 3 levels with actual precision, because the labels are meaningless without the mechanics. Level 1 is when you stop working and the money stops. Period. No portfolio, no passive income, no cushion of any kind. Your paycheck ends, your lifestyle ends on the same day, according to the U.S. Census Bureau's Survey of Income and Program Participation, roughly 34% of American workers have zero retirement savings. None. Another large segment has less than $10,000. Level 1 is not a moral failure. It's a structural condition. And it's more common than any financial media outlet will acknowledge because their advertising model depends on you believing that everyone else is already ahead of you and that you should be anxious enough to click on something. Level 2 is when you stop working and the money slows down, but doesn't stop. You have a 401k, maybe a Roth IRA, maybe a taxable brokerage account, maybe a rental property, maybe both. You've accumulated real, actual assets over years of discipline. In retirement, you draw them down at a controlled rate, 4%, maybe a little more, and you live off that drawdown until either the money runs out or you do, whichever comes first. Every piece of mainstream financial advice you have ever received is level 2 advice. Max your retirement contributions, diversify your portfolio, stay the course, don't panic sell. None of that advice is wrong. It's real advice. It works. It gets you to level 2. But level 2 is not the destination. Level 2 is the trapdoor. Level 3 is when you stop working and the money accelerates. Not slows, not holds steady, accelerates. Your capital is compounding at a faster rate than you're consuming it. Your assets are generating new assets. You are not watching a fixed pool count down on a 25-year clock. You are living off the output of a system that is simultaneously growing the system itself. At level 3, time is no longer the input. Capital deployment is the input. And the distance between those two things is wider than any income number I can put on a screen. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you the specific psychological event that stops people at level 2 right when they can see level 3 from where they're standing, and it's not what you think it is. But first, here's why level 2 is actually more dangerous than most people realize. Because level 2 doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like success. And that feeling is doing something very specific to your decision making. Let me tell you about Theodore. Fictional name, entirely real pattern. Theodore runs a small insurance agency in central Ohio. By his late 40s, he has done everything right. Owns his home outright, $450,000, sitting in a target date retirement fund. No consumer debt. Kids finish college. His financial advisor calls him once a quarter. "You're on track, Theodore." A PDF with a green pie chart arrives in his inbox. Theodore looks at it. Theodore feels safe. Here's the thing about feeling safe. Feeling safe is what your brain produces when it has decided the game is over. And when your brain decides the game is over, it stops generating the motivation to make the moves that would actually end the game in your favor. This isn't a metaphor. It's a documented psychological response. Harvard psychologist Tal Ben-Shahar wrote about it extensively. The technical name is arrival fallacy. You reach a goal, the motivational pressure drops. Inertia replaces momentum. And in finance, inertia is not neutral. Inertia is a slow, compounding 20-year loss. Theodore's inertia costs him $460,000. Here's the exact math. His target date fund carries an expense ratio of 0.7%. His advisor charges 1% annually on top of that as an AUM fee. Total annual fee drag, 1.7%. The market returns 7% annually. Theodore's real return, 5.3%. $450,000 compounded at 7% for 20 years becomes $1,730,000. At 5.3%, it becomes $1,270,000. The difference is $460,000. He paid more than his entire starting balance in accumulated fees and fee drag over 2 decades of feeling on track. The elevator charged him the price of a house. He got a pie chart. Now, and this is the reversal I need you to hold. You think the problem is fees. The actual problem is the comfort state that produced the fee arrangement in the first place. Fees are a symptom. The disease is called arrival. And arriving at level 2, feeling that specific flavor of "I've made it," is the single most expensive psychological event in most people's financial lives. Because it stops the optimization at exactly the wrong moment. The financial advice industry didn't create this, but it absolutely depends on it. Most financial advisors in the United States are paid on an AUM model, 1% of assets under management annually. The pitch is alignment. Your advisor makes more as your assets grow. Sounds reasonable. Here's the specific misalignment that nobody in the lobby is going to explain to you. Moving a client from level 2 to level 3 requires fundamentally restructuring their portfolio, challenging the identity they've built around being a good saver, redirecting behaviors that produce the level 2 balance in the first place, and potentially recommending strategies or products that generate no commission for the firm. The work is enormous. The incremental fee revenue from doing it, approximately 0 in the near term, because the fee is a percentage of assets already sitting there, not a function of how intelligently those assets are deployed. Your advisor's optimal business outcome and your optimal financial outcome are not the same thing. That's not a conspiracy. That's incentive structure. The elevator company doesn't hate the escalator. The elevator company just gets paid per ride. Here's a number that makes this concrete. In 2023, the actively managed mutual fund industry collected approximately $100 billion in annual fees from American retail investors. Over the prior decade, roughly 82% of large cap actively managed funds underperformed a simple S&P 500 index fund. 82% charged more, performed worse, and kept the fees unconditionally. The elevator charges you to go to a floor below where the stairs would have taken you. By the way, hit subscribe if you like this content. Otherwise, YouTube's algorithm may genuinely never show you my videos again. I know that sounds dramatic, but that is literally the mechanic. The algorithm interprets lack of subscription as lack of interest and routes my content away from you. I am not the system. Now, I want to introduce you to someone, Gary. Gary is 48 years old, a project manager at a manufacturing company in Columbus, Ohio. He earns $85,000 a year. He has $380,000 spread across a 401k, a small Roth IRA, and a taxable brokerage account. He owns his home with a mortgage locked at 3.2% fixed back in 2021. Genuinely smart move. He has no consumer debt. By every measure financial media uses, Gary is doing well. Gary is solidly at level 2 and knows it. Keep Gary in mind. He's going to show up again, and by the time this video ends, his story is going to say something specific about the level 3 transition that the 3 levels framework alone can't communicate. For now, just know that Gary exists. Gary has done the work, and Gary is about to make a completely ordinary decision that will cost him about $200,000 in compounding velocity over the next 12 years. Not because he's dumb, because his brain is going to do something completely predictable at a completely predictable moment. This is where it gets really interesting. There's a concept I want to walk you through called capital velocity. I'm borrowing this loosely from business finance, where it describes how fast a dollar moves through a system and generates another dollar. In your personal portfolio, capital velocity is the rate at which your assets generate deployable cash dividends, rental distributions, interest, business income that you can reinvest into more cash generating assets. Here's the difference in practice. A dollar sitting in a target date fund appreciates on paper. It grows. It has low velocity. It isn't generating cash you can redeploy today. A dollar in a dividend paying ETF that issues a quarterly dividend you immediately reinvest into more shares has higher velocity. A dollar deployed as a down payment on a small commercial property generating monthly rent that pays down the mortgage while the property itself appreciates, that dollar has high velocity. The level 2 investor is looking at a balance. The level 3 investor is looking at a system. And the difference is not exotic instruments or insider access. The difference is what question they're asking when they open a brokerage statement. The level 2 question, how much do I have? The level 3 question, what is this capital doing right now? And is that the highest velocity deployment I can execute with it? Let me put that in specific numbers through a realistic case study. Rachel is 42 years old. She earns $90,000 a year as a marketing director. She has $250,000 in her employer's 401k plan, invested in a Vanguard target date 2045 fund with an expense ratio of 0.15%. She contributes 15% of her salary, $13,500 per year, and her employer matches 4%. She has been doing this consistently for 11 years. Rachel is a disciplined, textbook level 2 investor. Rachel's projected 401k balance at age 65, assuming 7% annual returns and her current contribution rate, is approximately $1.89 million. At a 4% withdrawal rate, that generates about $75,600 per year. Her current annual expenses are around $60,000. The math says she's fine. On paper, she has a $15,600 annual margin. Fine is a level 2 word. Rachel also spends about $14,400 annually on discretionary consumption restaurants, streaming subscriptions, the occasional weekend trip, things that don't generate any return and that she doesn't think much about because individually they feel small. If Rachel redirects $8,000 of those $14,400 per year into a dividend-focused ETF, Vanguard's high dividend yield ETF currently yields roughly 3%, with approximately 3% historical dividend growth, and she reinvests every dividend. That position over 23 years grows to approximately $380,000, generating around $22,000 annually in passive liquid income, not locked in her 401k until 65, running now, deployable now. The cost, less than $700 a month, redirected from spending that was already happening. Rachel doesn't earn more. Rachel doesn't take additional risk. Rachel steps onto the escalator. At 65, she doesn't have one retirement account. She has a system. The 401k is the balance side. The dividend position is the velocity side. And when those two things exist simultaneously, the level 3 transition stops being a destination and starts being a direction. Now, you might think, I understand the math. Why doesn't everyone do this? And this is the part that I find genuinely more interesting than any specific investment instrument. It's mental accounting. Richard Thaler, Nobel Prize in Economics in 2017, documented extensively the way human beings treat money differently based on where it lives and how it arrived. When you look at your brokerage account and see $300,000, your brain doesn't see deployable capital. It creates a mental category, the retirement account, with a set of implicit rules attached to it. Don't touch it, don't change it, let it grow, it's safe. Those rules are level 2 rules. At the level 2 to level 3 transition point, those rules become the cage. Because let it grow and deploy it for velocity are not the same strategy. Your brain is running them as if they are. The level 3 investor doesn't experience their portfolio as a retirement account. They experience it as infrastructure. And that shift from balance thinking to infrastructure thinking is not a financial education problem. You can learn the math in an afternoon. It's an identity problem. People at level 2 have built a real, legitimate, hard-won identity around being disciplined savers, being on track. That identity anchors a set of behaviors that are optimal for accumulation and actively suboptimal for velocity generation. Changing the strategy means confronting the identity, and most people will choose the identity. Let me give you the most dramatic real-world illustration of the velocity principle I've ever encountered. Ronald Reed was a janitor and part-time gas station attendant from Brattleboro, Vermont. He worked his entire career at wages that in today's terms would be in the low 30s annually. He drove an old car for decades. He wore a safety pin to hold his coat together rather than buy a replacement. His neighbors assumed he was struggling financially, which was a reasonable assumption based on available evidence. When Ronald Reed died in 2014 at age 92, his estate was worth approximately $8 million, which he donated almost entirely to the local library and hospital. His method: he bought shares in blue chip dividend-paying companies, reinvested every dividend automatically, and never sold for 50 years. That is the complete list of strategies. No hedge fund allocation, no leveraged real estate, no option strategies, no timing the market. Just velocity, compounded over 5 decades, with zero lifestyle inflation intercepting the process at any point. The Escalator ran for 50 years. Ronald Reed was the only passenger. Now I want to be direct about something. I know what some of you are thinking. Ronald Reed's life sounds uncomfortable. The safety pin, the same car forever. And I am not suggesting that is the blueprint. The blueprint is the mechanism, not the lifestyle coefficient he chose to apply to it. You can be Rachel redirecting $700 a month and living well on the rest. The structural requirement isn't deprivation. The structural requirement is interception. You intercept the capital before the lifestyle absorbs it. That's the only thing the Escalator asks of you. Which brings me back to Gary. Gary just got promoted. His salary went from $85,000 to $102,000 a year, $17,000 additional annual income. Here's what Gary did, which is completely ordinary and not in any way unusual for a human being experiencing a positive financial event. He upgraded his truck, extended a kitchen renovation that had been on hold, increased his 401k contribution by 1%, and started eating out a little more regularly. Of the $17,000 raise, approximately $14,000 was absorbed by lifestyle adjustments within 8 weeks. $3,000 went to additional retirement savings. His balance improves marginally at 65. His velocity didn't move. This is what I mean by the lifestyle capture moment. And I want to explain the mechanics of it, not the morality, because the moralizing version of this conversation is useless and condescending. The consumer economy, automotive advertising, home improvement culture, restaurant culture, entertainment subscriptions is architecturally designed to intercept your capital at precisely the moment a raise or bonus arrives. That moment is when you feel good, when your receptivity to upgrades is highest, when your defenses against spending are lowest. There are $50 billion of annual advertising spend in the United States calibrated to that exact psychological moment. On the other side of that moment, sitting quietly with no marketing budget, is the escalator. It's running. It makes no noise. It has no campaign. The window between when money arrives and when lifestyle absorbs it is maybe 6 to 12 weeks. Level 3 investors make their move in that window. They don't do it because they're more disciplined than Gary. They do it because they've mapped the moment and planned for it before it arrives. Now, one quick observation before the framework. Someone is selling a weekend real estate seminar right now for $497 with an in-room upsell to their masterclass for $8,000 more. And the secret they reveal in the room is a strategy that is publicly documented, works in specific conditions, and requires about the same hours per week as a part-time job. The one thing the banks don't want you to know is apparently on page 43 of the FHA loan guide. Just so we're calibrated, here are 3 things you can actually do, specific to this framework, not generic. First, run the level diagnostic honestly, not aspirationally. Ask yourself one question. If every source of my active income stopped tomorrow, job, business, freelance, everything, how long before my lifestyle changes materially? Less than 2 years, and you are at level 1, regardless of your account balance. 2 years out to some finite point where you need to cut your spending. Level 2, never, because your asset output structurally exceeds your consumption. Level 3, the level you are actually at is the only accurate starting point for any plan. Most people are at level 2 and describing themselves as almost at level 3. Almost costs money. Second, calculate your current capital velocity percentage. Open your portfolio. Look at the trailing 12 months. How much actual cash did it generate? Not paper appreciation, cash. Dividends, rental distributions, bond interest, business income money that arrived in an account and could be redeployed. Divide that number by your total portfolio value. That percentage is your current velocity rate. If it is below 1.5%, you are running a balance, not a system. The escalator has a minimum speed threshold you have to reach before you can feel the movement. You have to direct enough capital toward cash-generating assets to make the output real. Third, implement the raise protocol. Every raise, every bonus, every tax refund, apply a 50% interception before lifestyle has the chance to absorb it. 50% goes immediately that week into a velocity-generating position. A dividend ETF, a real estate investment trust, a money market fund that feeds into something more permanent, whatever the highest velocity appropriate instrument is at your current level. The other 50% you spend however you want, without guilt, without tracking, completely freely. This is not deprivation, it is interception. You are catching the capital in the window before the consumer economy does. Over 10 years, on a starting salary of $90,000 with average 3% annual raises and a 50% velocity capture applied to each incremental dollar, you deploy an additional $220,000 into compounding positions. That's arithmetic, not optimism. Gary, older Gary, at 53, 5 years after the promotion, and the truck eventually ran something like this protocol. He read something that made the level 3 frame click for him, the way these things click when you're finally ready to see them. He didn't blow up his life. He didn't sell the truck. He didn't touch his 401k structure. He redirected $9,000 a year from discretionary spending into 2 positions, a high dividend ETF and a fractional commercial real estate crowdfunding platform that issues quarterly distributions. He reinvested everything. 8 years later, at 61, that velocity position generates approximately $17,000 annually in passive income. He reinvests about $12,000 of it. He pockets $5,000 as a liquidity cushion. He is not at level 3 yet. But if his employer called him tomorrow and said the job was eliminated, his lifestyle would not change for at least 3 years. The escalator is carrying him. He can feel it. That feeling, not the quarterly balance, not the green pie chart that is the actual marker of the level 3 transition. When your capital is doing something independent of your presence. When the system produces output while you sleep, while you're on vacation, while you're dealing with whatever life throws at you. That's the floor. Most people miss it because the financial advice industry handed them a very comfortable story about a different floor. Stay on track, diversify, let it grow. That story is not wrong. It's incomplete. Structurally, incentive logically, business model logically, incomplete. Your advisor's quarterly call, the green pie chart, the you're on track, none of those things are malicious. They are the elevator operating normally. The elevator just doesn't go to level 3. It stops at level 2 and charges you 1% of your balance to wait there. I find this more absurd than infuriating. There's a building full of people taking the elevator, paying for each ride, watching floor numbers increment slowly upward, completely unaware that there's a moving staircase 10 feet to the left that's been running for free the whole time. The escalator was running the whole time. It just doesn't have a lobby presence. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. A 2023 paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that retail crypto investors underperformed a simple S&P 500 buy and hold strategy by an average of 73% over the same holding periods. 73% worse. With dramatically more time invested, more volatility absorbed, more tax complexity generated, more emotional energy spent, the person who opened a Vanguard account, set up automatic investments, and ignored it for 20 years beat the person refreshing their crypto portfolio at 2 in the morning by 73% on average. The excitement is the bug, not a feature. The whole feature is that it's boring. The 95% aren't stuck at level 2 because they're lazy or undisciplined or unsophisticated. They're stuck because the system is architecturally designed to produce level 2 people and harvest 1% off their balance indefinitely. And because their brain produces a comfort signal at level 2 that is functionally indistinguishable from the feeling of success. And because there is no advertising budget behind the escalator, level 3 is not a number, it's a direction. It's Rachel at 42 redirecting $700 a month. It's Gary at 53 finally running the raise protocol and not announcing it to anyone because honestly, the simplicity of it is a little embarrassing. It's Ronald Reed and his safety pin and 50 years of quarterly dividends compounding into $8 million while his neighbors assumed he couldn't afford a new coat. The building is the same for all of them. The escalator is running for all of them. Go find the button.